Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to your Bitcoin show. Listen, I'm glad to have you guys here. Now, I want to get started right away, so let's open up the charts right here, and let's take a look at this article. First article to look at is why is Bitcoin is likely to head higher, in price. Okay, let's go up to the top of the page. Why Bitcoin is likely headed to $10,000, possibly even higher than that. Well, I think it's gonna take off pretty soon. Now, I called this last when we hit this. We had this last rise in price, and this big leg up in price. I called the top of it, and I said it's going to go along sideways for a couple months. Well, it's been going along sideways for quite a little while now, and we're headed toward the end of that couple month period where I expect it to start to move higher. Possibly within the next 3 to 4 weeks, I'm expecting it to start to take off again, and move to the next leg up, which I think is going to take us to the $10,000 mark. But I think once we pass that $10,000 mark, then she's going to drop back down to maybe 9,500 or something, and then she's going to slowly creep back up to the 10,000 mark a second time, and then bust through it. That's what I think she's going to do. But I think she's not going to stay up there above $10,000 real long. She's probably going to drop back down to 9,000 something and go along for a while again like she just did. It says Bitcoin has been consolidating around the $8,000 level for some time now. The technical images suggest that Bitcoin bull market is back. Prices could be headed substantially higher from here. Now, they go on to talk in this article that in its next stop is 10K and then higher. I sort of agree with that. Now, remember, this is not financial advice. Don't go out and run out and buy Bitcoin, because this is a very risky asset. Bitcoin is still actually in its development. It's growing. It's spreading, through the world, and it's still relatively small. We're still in the infancy of this thing. This thing, actually, really, it's a monster. Bitcoin is a monster. And what I can see it doing in the next couple of years, it'll be proven to be a monster. Actually a monster, because we're set up in a legacy financial system, a legacy fiat financial system. And you just can't uproot that overnight and replace it with Bitcoin without causing disastrous consequences. But that looks more and more every single day. It looks more and more like that's what's going to happen. The Bitcoin bull market appears to be back. A significant bear market in 2018, which saw Bitcoin prices implode by roughly 85% from peak to trough. The new bull market appears to have imaged from the ashes of the crypto winter, and Bitcoin is on its way up again, basically, is the essentials of what they're saying here. Bitcoin long-term, the network effect, they're talking about bull market cycles, and how high the price could likely go. How high will Bitcoin's peak if there's 100 million people have blockchain accounts? I think right now there's like 40 million, and they're talking about the growth when it grows to 100 million. So we got 40 million, I guess, now. It grows to 100 million. They're talking about, like, that's how many people are on the blockchain accounts, 100 million. Where will Bitcoin price be? He says simply going by past price appreciations, Bitcoin could peak at around $100,000 if about 100 million people join the blockchain network, the Bitcoin network. Well, right now I think they got like 40 million. As Bitcoin prices are rising right now, more and more people are getting interested. It's all the buzzword out there, Bitcoin. So it could move from 40 million to 100 million people rather quickly. And he says if it moves to 100 million people, we could be looking at a price of $100,000 per Bitcoin. It says more and more these users are on the blockchain network. He says also, I want to clarify, just because there are 40 million blockchain accounts on the Bitcoin network, it does not mean that 40 million people own or participate in trading Bitcoin. Some users have multiple accounts, and many accounts are inactive due to lost keys or other issues. But it is 40 million. Okay, so that's the growth. I'm going to tell you guys right up front. When I first started with Bitcoin a few years ago, if I had known there would be 40 million users right now, oh man, I would have never sold my Bitcoins. Traded them for like a little bit of silver. No, I would have kept them, you know, and I wish I had have kept them. But it's still the same thing's going to happen all over again. This exponential growth, whatever Bitcoin you have right now, you're probably very likely well off to keep it. I think hodlers are going to be the most fortunate people. And the longest hodlers, the ones that can actually ride this thing out to its conclusion. In other words, instead of like, it's going to be awful tempting if Bitcoin goes to $100,000. I mean, we're not rich people out here. Most of us watch this show, watch me, are not rich people. And Bitcoin goes to $100,000 a piece, it's going to be awful tempting to sell a little bit to maybe pay off your mortgage or whatever, you know? Seriously. I mean, because you also, at the same time, when Bitcoin goes to 100,000, you're thinking to yourself, hey, you know what? So Bitcoin goes to 100,000 bucks, right? Okay? Just pretend in your mind does it? It goes to $100,000. You go back to bed that night saying, "Oh, I got a half a Bitcoin," right? You know, and so I got $50,000. You know, you tell your wife, "Oh, I got $50,000." Go to bed that night. Next morning you wake up, and Bitcoin's dropped from 100,000 to 95,000. But it does that. Bitcoin on its way up, it'll drop off some. It'll drop off a little bit. You know, and then it'll go back up a little bit higher, and it's almost like a casino. Actually, what it reminds me of, do you remember those old games they used to play where you'd go in and $1 million question or whatever, and the guy would get up to like a $200,000, and he'd say, well, do you want to risk the $200,000 and go for the next question, which is a $500,000 question, and you'll lose your $200,000 if you go for the $500,000 question. What do you want to do to the guy? And they were doing this to a guy that was just like us. A guy who hasn't got a lot of money, you know. He's sitting there, and I could take the money now. It's a lot of money, more money than I've ever seen in my life. This is going to be the same sort of deal. You know? And so you're going to be sitting there, and you're going to be like, oh, my, what do I do? You know, do I sell my Bitcoin now at 100,000? Or do I wait for it to go to 200,000? It's the same sort of thing, see? Anyway, he's talking about it here. He's saying it could go to $1 million if we get 1 billion people on the blockchain. You know, rather than 40 million we got now. The next step is 100 million. He's saying 100,000, and then he's saying $1 million a piece if we go to 1 billion people. Yeah, but there's not 1 billion people on Earth. There's 1 billion people in China alone. For crying out loud, that could take it to $1 million a coin. What about the whole Earth? When you consider how many Bitcoins have been lost, too, take that into account. Now we're going to change articles right here, and we're going to take a look at this article. The hottest cryptocurrency this year. Litecoin is the right coin. Guess which coin it is? You must know. 330% up this year. Can you imagine? 330% up. Litecoin. And they're attributing that to the halving. I don't think it's all a halving that's causing Litecoin to actually go up so high. To be honest. I think what's really attributing Litecoin, I think Litecoin was undervalued. I think Litecoin's been undervalued all along, and I think it's still undervalued. Litecoin is your second primary coin next to Bitcoin. Litecoin is silver to Bitcoin's gold. And I think in the end, ultimately, you're going to see it move into the secondary position. And it should be worth 25% of a Bitcoin. That's what it should be worth. Optimum, it would be worth 25%. But when you look at the gold to silver ratio in the real world of gold to silver, rather than internet gold, internet silver, and you look at the real world, real gold and real silver, what you see is the same sort of deal. Real silver should be about 1 to 15 or 1 to 20 with real gold, right? Instead of like 85 to 1. It's way off right now. It's off in the wilderness someplace. It has a long way to go. Silver is completely undervalued. So both silvers. Litecoin is silver. I love Litecoin. It's undervalued. Real silver, same deal. And they're both at a super bargain. Both of them. And they've been a bargain all along for both of them. Someday both of these things, Litecoin and silver, are both going to find their own in the world's market. And they're both going to be extremely expensive. So this year's top performing cryptocurrency is up more than 3 times, and you probably never heard of it, he says in the article. Well, a lot of people that read this article will have never heard of it. You know, seriously. Litecoin, which has gained more than 330% since the beginning of this year, is outpacing all crypto peers, including Ether and XRP. Now, in my mind, there's only 2 coins that standing in Litecoin's way. It's Ether and XRP. And I don't think XRP is going to stand in Litecoin's way too much longer, and I don't think Ether is either. I'll tell you the truth. XRP has a big flaw. XRP has 50 billion of them that they're holding in escrow. 50 billion coins. Okay? And it also, it's reliant upon use case scenarios coming true. You know? That's what XRP is relying. Now Ether's got problems too. You know, Ether doesn't actually have a cap limit on how many Ethers there are, from what I understand. There's no hard limit. In other words, they can keep creating Ethers and creating Ethers and creating Ethers. There's no limit there. There's no hard limit. It's like fiat has no hard limit. They can create as much dollars as they want. You know? And Bitcoin has a hard limit. Litecoin has a hard limit. Those hard limits, that takes out the worries about how many coins is going to be in existence. This is one of the big reasons why it's an HODL coin. Let's move on. Bitcoin leaves a carbon footprint as large as Las Vegas, study finds. Now, you know, I've heard a lot of this about how they say Bitcoin takes so much energy, you know, and it's not eco-friendly and all this kind of stuff. You know, it requires a lot of electricity, significant carbon footprint. You know, a carbon footprint to impact the size of Las Vegas or a small country like Sri Lanka. You know, it takes 22 megatons in CO2 emissions, the researchers estimate. And so they're saying it takes vast amounts of electricity. And they say this is actually needed to secure your Bitcoin transactions. And I say, baloney. Baloney. I'll tell you what. Why they're using so much electricity to do Bitcoin transactions is it's overkill. The miners, they want money. Bitcoin is money. And this is why they're mining for them, obviously. They're all in there like a bunch of hungry piranha, these miners, trying to get these Bitcoins, and they're exceeding what Bitcoin really needs. The bottleneck in the Bitcoin network is a limitation in block size, where the Bitcoin only has 7 transactions per second. That bottleneck is coming down to the limitations on Bitcoin itself, not to the amount of mining power. So the mining power is far exceeding those limitations that Bitcoin already has, and you could probably chop 3/4 of that mining power away and remove it, and Bitcoin would still make those 7 transactions a second needed to secure the network. You could probably chop away 99% of those miners. Just switch all those miners off, switch all their machines off, and just leave a little bit, maybe 10% of the miners we have now. And Bitcoin would still function. You know? The reason why there's so much Bitcoin is having such a big carbon footprint is they're greedy to get it. They're switching on more and more miners. They're increasing the network amount of computing power on the network so that it's harder and harder to get a Bitcoin. And it's all about greed. That's what it's all about. But the thing is as Bitcoin price moves up, the greed's going to get hotter and hotter, and there's going to be more miners coming on the network, and the mining power will go even higher. That's what's going to happen, you know. But this is what's going to happen. Greed is what fuels Bitcoin. Greed is what's going to fuel Bitcoin higher and higher until it takes over the entire monetary system, ultimately in the end, you know. And this is the way we're going with this. Listen, thank you guys for listening to this show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye-bye, guys.